All right, welcome back to On Record. I am joined now by Brian Hampton. Brian, how are you doing on this day?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Cannot complain at all. Definitely going to get things started. Just overall, just how have things been for you for the past, let's say, 2 years since the pandemic has taken a stranglehold on our lives?
Oh, it's been interesting. It's been I've had to deal. Everybody had to deal with it as it came. Gratefully for me, I did not lose anyone in my family close around from COVID. We had losses, but not from COVID. So gratefully, everyone that was around me had it survived. But I had it myself, and luckily I didn't have any symptoms. But it's been a shift, where we all went from whatever your day to day was, and it was a transition that we all had to make and kind of figure it out. And now we're sort of coming out of it where we're not quarantined anymore. So now you have to get adjusted to the new life after that. So it's been a bunch of change, but we all have to adapt to it. So I actually came 2 years ago, was March of 2019, actually April of 2019 is when I first came to move to Atlanta. And then once the pandemic hit, it was I was doing a lot of events working music, covering different carnivals, different conferences, interviews, things like that. And then once that came to a stop, the music industry just halted. And, I had a lot of time to write a book. So that led into me writing Trust Your Vision. It's something that, I wanted to do and get out there just to help people find their purpose and live into their dreams. So that's been the last 2 years for me in a nutshell.
Definitely, I was about to ask about the music side of things, and also like what keeps you what are you doing now? How are you able to use your time during the whole pandemic? You've written a book, and then also like you say you're a big music head. What are some of the music and stuff that you be listening to on the daily?
Now I still stick with a lot of my favorites. I keep up with a lot of the new artists as well. I'm trying to think the last really great CD. I like the Big Sean. I know he just has an EP that come out. His last
Yep.
CD that came out. The last great CD that I was inspired by, I'll say that was Corday, his album, which ended up being Grammy nominated. But I could see that coming. It was a dope project from start to finish. So that was the last one I would say that I was inspired by. But I try to everything that comes out, listen to it. I love the production on Kanye's last album, Donda. So I try to listen to everything, but those were last two I can think of off top that I was inspired by.
What was your impression of Donda? I'm just curious.
I would have loved, first of all, I think any project, the majority that Kanye West works on, the production is going to be at an all-time high. So that's what I always say. I enjoyed the production of it. I enjoyed the second half of the album a lot more than the first half. And it looks like, from what I've read and researched, that Saha was missing from a lot of the album. And I think I would have loved his pen to be on it and others, just to get that, lyricism top tier. But I love the production on it, and I love the second half of the album a lot better than the first. But overall, I thought it was good.
How much, in your opinion, do you think it compares to like old Kanye though?
Yeah, because of the lyricism from old Kanye projects. I would say it's hard to rank his old projects up against what's going on now in his new music. So it doesn't, for me, compare to how inspiring Graduation was, and My Dark Twisted Fantasy, and a lot of and of course College Dropout, and a lot of that. It's hard to compare his old music to his new music. So yeah, I don't think it matches to that. But he's also in a different place, in a different zone, and I love artists that grow too. But feeling wise, it's hard to recreate, because I was going through different points things in my life where that music inspired me to chase after dreams and things like that. So it was it has his older music has a different connection to me than the newer.
I hear you on that. I'm still much more of a fan. I still listen to the old school Kanye going back to, like you said, late registration, college dropout. Graduation is my favorite all time album. And then also My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. That was a pretty good. I mean, I'm still much more of a fan of the older Kanye and then the newer Kanye. Granted, Donda was better than some of his more recent albums, but that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's funny. Graduation is my favorite Kanye album as well, but most people will say My Dark and Twisted Fantasy was. So, what makes you say Graduation?
Well, for me, graduation, I know just when I was in middle school back
Mm-hmm.
when that album dropped out, and just a lot of those songs like the Good Life is still one of my favorite songs to this day. And it's just I felt like in those when it came to that music, it was for me a little bit more upbeat and also definitely got me through on a personal level just some, I don't want to say dark times, but I'm a teenager at the time. I'm figuring out who I am as a person, as it says, and coming somewhat into my own. I'm still doing that to this day, but takes me back to that. So it's a much more of a nostalgic feeling for me.
Oh yeah, agree wholeheartedly. I was, similar position in life. I was working, just 9 to 5 job that I didn't love, and I knew I had more to do. And then, hearing songs like "I Wonder" and "Wait Till I Get My Money Right" and all of that, all of those things connected with me on a different level. So yeah, I agree.
Gotcha. So tell me about your upbringing. How did you come up in the world? And where you're from and
Um,
everything?
I'm from PG County, Maryland, which is in the DMV, right outside of DC. I grew up in Oxon Hill, off of Oxon Hill Road, and went to Oxon Hill High School. That's right outside of, you know, for Southeast DC and into Maryland. It's in Maryland, but it's right outside of DC. So yeah, I grew up there, had a great childhood. I came from a 2 parent household, and I grew up in a community where it was really each one teach one, and a whole village raises a child. So I still have my lifelong friends from this day came from growing up in that neighborhood, and just learned a lot growing up there, playing sports, learning competition. And there's so many microcosms of sports is a microcosm of life, so many things, life lessons that you learn from sports. And I grew up well. It was a community. It was also, I call that PG County is a microcosm of Black people, because you have all sorts of every type of African American that you can think of, where you can go to, the higher parts of the county and Bowie and Upper Marlboro and the mansions, and you can see, very successful Black people. You can go to some other parts where it's a lot of help that's needed. It's a lot of help, underprivileged areas. And then we were right in the middle, in between, all of that. So it gave me great perspective on just my culture, my people, and growing up, and also seeing how African Americans succeed, because it's such a negative connotation of us across the country in a lot of people's eyes. And it was great for me to see firsthand my father being a successful African American man, and then seeing so many people around them succeed. So everything that I would see on TV or in media, oh, this isn't true, because in my real life, this is what I see.
What did your parents do for a living?
My father was in IT, he was IT management and director for years. And my mom had multiple different jobs here and there, but she was mainly really a teacher. But she had, what she used, and that's what she did, what she was best at. But she didn't teach in school. She had Sunday school and things like that. But she had great jobs. I remember one of the jobs where she worked for American Chemical Society. She worked for this great company that flew us out, and we saw Braves games, and memories that I'll never forget. But she had multiple different jobs over the years just to help, and they were great jobs. But I think her passion, which she wasn't her 9 to 5, is just teaching.
And then for you, growing up in a two-parent household in PG County, like you said, you kind of saw some of everything, especially within the Black community. How did that, help you as a person, grow up to have a dual parent support system?
It showed me the importance, of it, and how I got, the yin and the yang and both sides of the coin was very, very important. My mom was there to always support, always give me love, always be behind me. And my father was there, and he gave me those things too. But he was there for giving me structure, giving me discipline, and not let me get away with anything, and preparing me to for this world, and how I'll be able to move as an African American man, the things that I would have to overcome and do that would be different than any other experience. So uh, it let me show the importance. Now, people can be successful no matter where you come from or where you're at. You had a proper mindset and some guidance, but I could see how it helped me.
College life, what was that like for you? Where did you go to school, and where did you
I went
major in?
I went to Morgan State University. I was a communication studies major in broadcast journalism and in PR as well. But I never really did too much with PR. I stayed in the journalism realm, but loved Morgan State, HBCU. Went there on a whim. My friend Chris was going there the year before. They grew up in that same neighborhood, Tor Brian, that I talked about, and he sung his praises. It was between my mom is a Howard graduate, so I wanted to go to Howard. Me being in high school, just not thinking about my future at all, and I just didn't have the right mindset. I waited too late to apply for Howard, and Morgan's the only school I applied to. A couple of my other friends from the neighborhood were going, and I said, what, I'm gonna apply here. And it was really, even though it was off a whim, it was the best thing that could have happened to me because I learned so much more about my culture there. In our schools, we learn, the traditional George Washington Carver, Martin Luther King. But once I went to Morgan State and, study African diaspora, and it's like, okay, we didn't start off as slaves. We got a whole history, hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years before, centuries. So I learned so much more about my culture and the experience. And it's not anybody that's going to tell you, nothing like a HBCU now and the culture that's there. And now it's celebrated. Now you see it's a lot of donations that's happening. It's a lot of support for HBCUs. But when I went, that wasn't always the mindset. Some people thought, oh, this was 13th grade, or people would make fun of HBCUs. But you look at where, people who have come from HBCUs and what they've done from, the small amount to compare HBCUs and a graduate of what they've done to, all these other major universities. I think percentage wise, it's uncomparable. It's amazing how many success stories we have that come from HBCUs. And I just believe it doesn't matter if you had the right information and you had a right drive, all of those things. I work with people who have Ivy League degrees and all of that. And there's nothing, don't get me wrong. I'm not, nothing wrong with that. But that doesn't make, education is education, and that doesn't make them better or less than. I'm sure they have some more opportunities with like networking, but HBCUs are getting great with that too, with partnering with major brands, with Google, with Microsoft, with Facebook, with a lot of different brands. So it was a great experience, and I'm glad that the world has caught up to the HBCU experience, and more people are experiencing it.
Definitely, as someone that grew up in Petersburg, Virginia, was seeing Virginia State kind of thrive more and more. I love being able to see how that school has been able to come up, and also you see more HBCUs, getting more celebrated, like you just said. I mean, I was watching ESPN's First Take just the other day. They did a show down in Florida A&M down in
Mm-hmm.
Tallahassee. Stephen A. Smith
Yeah.
was there. Will Packer, Kevin Hart. They were definitely on the HBCU bandwagon. It's definitely good to see from these major companies and major brands. So, following that up, for you, what was your aspirations when you went to Morgan State?
I knew I wanted to be in music or in sports. Those are the two paths that I wanted to take. So journalism, I saw myself as Stuart Scott. You know, that was an inspiration to me growing up as a
Rest in
kid.
peace, too.
He was just one of the people who was unapologetically himself. He didn't lose this. He didn't, get on TV and then start talking in a different voice. And he was himself and ultimate professional and great at what he did. So that was somebody where, I was looking into either getting into sports, and I always had a love for music, since I was a kid, from starting from R&B and then falling in love with hip hop. And so I knew I wanted to be in those two things. And initially coming into college, I wanted to be an A&R for a record company or a sports broadcaster. Those are my two goals.
And then going back to the music side, because I know you do more music nowadays. What was some of the music that you listened to when you were growing up?
I first introduced to hip hop was really the No Way Out album, Puff Daddy and the Family and Biggie. That was my favorite rapper, still is. And it was just and I appreciate it more now that I'm older. I mean, when I was younger, it was just great music, and I could tell Biggie had a skill that was far superior. And there's a lot of things. I was a chubby kid, and a lot of things that I could relate to. Was this guy who just had all this, who was talented, had all the swag in the world, and had confidence times a million. So it was something that I could look up to and embrace. So that was my earlier renditions with a lot of the Bad Boy era. That was what started my love into hip hop. But there was so much great music that came out then. Of course, Jay-Z, he came after. Shortly after the death, really took the reins, and still have it to this day. Nas, who is my current favorite rapper alive, I understood Nas once I went to college. But yeah, starting off, I would say Biggie, Jay-Z, DMX, that era. Those were the first few rappers that I became fans of.
So when you were in school, you say you wanted to go more, I guess, in the journalism route, and also want to go into music and sports. Did you have one over the other that you preferred?
Trying to think back at the time, no, I still to this day have a love of them both. I love that, both of them have an unpredictable aspect to it. But sports, anybody can win in any day, and music, you just don't know. It's a mystique and a magic to music that I love, to where you just don't know. You don't know. You record this song and you think it's great, and somebody puts it out, and it, for some reason, maybe it's the timing, maybe it's the promotion, it does nothing. And there's other songs that you think won't do anything, they become your biggest hits. And I've interviewed so many artists where that's the case. So I just love that. It's really, it's a lot of unpredictability, and music has been, everybody knows, watered down, because especially hip hop has been so successful. So now you have these huge corporations coming in, and they just want to copy paste. Oh, this is hot over there. Megan Thee Stallion's doing this. Bam. We need to have our rapper sound just like her, and we'll get, some of those sales. So it takes a lot of the art out, but you can still find the art. I just got to search for it a little harder now.
And then in sports, who were some of your favorite athletes or favorite teams that you had when you were coming up, or favorite sports as well?
Well, I was a Washington, formerly known as the Redskins football team fan now. I struggle saying that out loud. I go to meetings to talk about it.
Understand why?
Yeah, no, the team, and it's crazy. I was just talking about this the other day, but the team I grew up loving, it's like I was bamboozled in late 80s, early 90s. I mean, it was 3 Super Bowls when I was young. I was like, oh, I got the winning team. The Redskins were like, were a perennial playoff team. And now, their perennial team is not in the playoffs. It's like and a lot of that has to do with ownership and, that's come out.
Culture of the team too.
100%, 100%. Culture, all of that has to do like I said, microcosm of life in sports. All of that has to do with your chances to win, and if what you're around and your environment is going to affect everything that you do. So anyway, they're still my favorite football team because I'm just loyal to a fault. But them, New York Knicks, they're getting better now, but in the same situation, I grew up fans of them. They always played the Bulls teams tough, and Patrick Ewing was a big Patrick Ewing fan. Barry Sanders, Darryl Green, Art Monk, Daryl Williams, can't forget. It's a lot of, those are the ones that I can, Allen Iverson, Kevin Garnett, I can go on, but those are the ones that stand out.
So after you left Morgan State, where did your career take you? Did it take you in the direction that you wanted to go in while you were in college, or did it take you somewhere completely different?
Completely different. I'm glad you said the word take you, because I really just allowed, my career to take me, and didn't really have, foresight that I do now, and direction and all of that. So one of the things that I wish I did, I started looking for jobs a couple of months before I was graduating. I started for applying different jobs. Now this was 2007, height of the recession. So I was able to get jobs like nothing, while I was in school. Now I'm trying to apply a full-time job, and things aren't going, well. I wish I would have, because I ended up interning in college for this local record company. One of my friends was management on a company, and it was, really just easy for me, an easy grade. And I did do stuff working for them, but we held events and, promotions and things like that. But I tell to anybody that I would have had like a multiple internships with, bigger organizations. So, that would have given me a lot more opportunity to network and set myself up when I do graduate. So I recommend, even when I previously worked at CNN and would speak to the interns, I would always tell them, keep with the internships and making the connections that they have while they're there. So anyway, my career took me to working for Citibank. That was my first job as a bank teller. You wonder, how did I get there? It was 2 months after I graduated. This is the only job that I can get 4 months before my student loans would start kicking in and I would have to pay. And during that time, or actually before then, I went to Howard University job fair they have annually, and I'm passing out my resume, Channel 7, Channel 8 locally. The news channel and ABC were there, and I passed my resume to the director of human resources and introduced myself, and he looked at my resume and said, "Do you have a mother named Juanita, and you have a brother?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got a father too. Like, who is this guy? But he had knew my mother from working with him at that one of those previous jobs that I was talking about that flew him out, Ramico, and he brought me in for an interview for IT. Didn't know anything about IT. Long story short, he said, "You had the greatest interview. You don't know anything about IT. We can't hire you." But there was a production assistant, basically equivalent of a job that was $7 to $8. It was so much less, $7 to $8 an hour, so much less than what I was making, even when I was in school. I didn't take it in with my student loans and everything. I said, I can't survive, in this area making that. And I ultimately became a bank teller and then went into IT. But I went away from journalism just because of the money aspect. And I talk about it in my book, Trust Your Vision, that I wish if I were to go back, everything happened and I don't regret anything. But if I were to go back and do that, I would have not used, a lot of people think, looking back at the time, well, that's a huge disparity, $7 to $8 an hour going from 14 to 15 when I was making at the bank, which, wasn't amazing either. But for the area that I was in. But yeah, I would have wished that I would have took the job in my field, because in the end, most Americans are still a couple of paychecks away from being homeless and one paycheck from having to use their savings 6 out of 10 10 Americans are one paycheck away from having to dip into their savings, and a few from being homeless. So if you're going to be that close either way, why not do what you love? So yeah, I went as a bank teller. I eventually went into IT, and I did, was very successful in IT still, currently. But I had this itch to get back into journalism. I liked IT, but my passion was in journalism.
And then just when you said, when you talked to the guy at the job fair and he asked you about IT, you said you didn't know anything. That seemed a lot of spark within you to go into that field. What exactly drove you to going into IT? Was it the words he said, or maybe just an opportunity that came along as well?
I'm glad you mentioned it. It was an opportunity that came along. I think it was a precursor. It was just a lot of things that I believe God gives you, clues along the way. And I had no interest in IT, even though my father was in it. I took a programming class. So that was my only thought of what IT was. And that was like, you miss a certain character in the script and your whole script is bad. I was like, I don't want to do this. And so I had no other information on what other things you can do in IT besides programming. So anyway, I was working at Verizon, customer service representative, and my friends, two of them who referred me, they were graduates in IT, and they took that customer service role because we did tier 1 tech support, and then grew into other IT jobs. So I took the same path. I always, I could support phones, and I was good with troubleshooting phones, and I had, common sense. So I picked up everything on the way. I didn't know anything about IT. I didn't know how to find the IP address, but I picked it all up on the way, and was able to, thrive in it. But that led me into to IT, really working at Verizon and being around those friends who had graduated in it.
And then one thing I also wanted to bring up, you talked about how you were offered only $7 an hour to be $8 an hour to be a production assistant, which is kind of the norm at a lot of TV stations and production companies, media in general, just taking these low paying jobs to, hopefully, try to break through to get that first real opportunity, whether it's a on-air person or producer. For that to be offered to you, and a lot of other students that graduate from school, do you have any advice for them when it comes to, being offered that job, but also you have the life situation, you got loans to pay, you got bills, rent? Do you have any advice for them, especially if they're truly trying to pursue that big job in the media after they graduate?
Yeah, I would tell them just to stay patient, because that's deflating when you graduate. And it was for me, and I know it was for a lot of students, especially graduating in a recession. You come out and you do what everybody tells you to do. You go to school, you get your college degree, and you think you're gonna come out and now, make this sort of amount of money and fall in, and then you run into, well, you need more experience. Well, how do I gain experience if you don't give me experience? And you run into all of these roadblocks. So if you're offered a job into the door, I say take it. Like I said, I ended up coming back to it. So it's always gonna pull at you, and do what you can do. If you can, if you can stay with your parents or friends or family, if you're able to work other jobs, temporarily until you network and can move your way out of there, and do, as long as you're doing your job, well, if that second job is causing you to be late and on, then get rid of the second job and try to stay with family. I think one big mistake that we have, especially in our culture, is like once you get 18 and you go to college, you graduate, it's like, all right, get out, get on your own, get on your own, get on your own. When you look at other cultures, that's not the case. They come home, and a lot of that comes from you also the hole that we were put in, being 400 years behind. But they stay with their families. A lot of families that once I, start working other places to meet other people, then they get their parents, help them get a house, and then once they're stable and able to pay their own bills, they don't go from this, this apartment struggling to get by type of thing that, so many people that I did, that so many people did. So I was so ready to get away from being under my parents' roof and I had all this freedom in college, and my parents were great, at home. They weren't like over the top of me or anything, but I just wanted my own space. And if I would go back, I would just say, be patient and make those connections. Always be strategically looking forward and making a connection so you can grow, apply, be able to, especially in the journalism field, move around, travel, go to different places to, while you're young, get yourself, that pay that you want. Because I know it's deflating coming out $7, $8 an hour. It's tough. Everybody has bills to pay, and you have all this pressure around you with other people, other graduates doing well, and so you feel like, oh, I need to get more money to make it appear that I'm doing well. But just block out the noise, I would say, and I wish I would have took this advice. Is just stay with somebody, stay in your field, continue to network and move up. And it's better to do that, while you're young and in your 20s. And so once you get that bigger salary, you've already put in the work, and it'll be a lot easier if you start young, like most things.
Definitely. And then also keep in mind some of these podunk cities and little areas that's could be $70 even for an on air job. That could be how much you're making starting out. So definitely wanting to put that in there.
Mm-hmm.
So you say you
Mm-hmm.
worked at CNN. What was that like for you? And what did you get to do?
It was a great experience. I learned so much. I have to thank John Stevenson, who was a part of and that's another thing in networking. We worked together. I was a lead for a team at this Tech Systems, and we were supporting a law firm then, lived at a law firm. So I met him. We worked on the same team, and he left. He used to work for CNN, went back, and once he got in, he referred me, and Crystal Mayberry, who's a godsend, hired me. And so it was a great experience. They really let me grow. They believed in me. They let me, what I loved about the CNN experience is you could learn and do what you want to do. You have to first and foremost do your job and do it well. But it was nobody had any ties on, and that's different from a lot of companies who I work for, where certain people, they just put you in a box like, hey, you do IT and you do this part of IT. So you just stay over here as a lead or desktop support or whatever it is, and we do this. And CNN was the complete opposite. You could, as long as you did your job well, you could learn and study behind anybody, and they encouraged that because they wanted to keep everybody, within CNN, which I think was very smart, and I think a lot of companies should do as well. So it was a great corporate job. I did a lot of events, traveled, was able to do Democratic Convention in 2016 in Philadelphia. Meet all sorts of people. I was there at the ascension of Angela Rye, who's just completely taken off, and Van Jones, all great people on and off camera. Wolf Blitzer was, I was able to work with him numerous times, and he was amazing to work with. So the experience was it was great, but it was especially during the election year, you just know that's going to be your life, the work-life balance. Being in IT and covering and during the election in the Trump years, like it was a lot, so it was a great experience, but it's also you're gonna put in hours. You're gonna, your life is gonna revolve around it at some point, because you're going to be covering different stories. It's going to be breaking news, and you're going to be out of that traditional, I work 8 hours and go home. That's not going to be the lifestyle.
And I was just about to ask, how long were you there for?
I was there for 5 years. And like I said, it was great. It was one of probably the best corporate job. Yeah, it was the best corporate job that I had. And I did numerous things there, primarily desktop support and supporting all the on-air shows that came out of DC. So that's how I got to work with Wolf Blitzer and a lot of people in the control rooms, and we covered different events when we traveled. Also was, working with the edit bays, who they pretty much clip all of the video content that you get on CNN is coming out of DC. So, and I was able to do a little bit of everything. That was primarily what I was doing, taking care of that base and being the team lead of the desktop support team and supporting the on air talent. But it was I could do and learn what I wanted to learn. So that was the great part of being there.
And just to be clear, you were working out of DC, correct?
Yep,
That's
working out of DC. Yep.
gotcha. So while you were working at CNN, you're working at one of the biggest media conglomerates in the world under Turner. But did you still have some of those journalistic aspirations while you were there?
Oh, 100%. And if anything, it propelled that. It showed that, hey, I can do this, and I don't want to be in politics. It never did. So I didn't want to do it on that end. On the other spectrum, but then I was able to forge a lot of relationships with journalists and people who've done this on the highest level and get advice from them. And that's something that I always, tell to anyone either. Like, take advantage of everywhere that you're working and network and talk to people. The great thing about IT is you work with everybody. Like, everybody's going to need some IT help or assistance at some point. So for people who have the jobs that's not, find your way to network and grow. And I had a lot of lunches with journalists and writers and people on a digital team, and I was able to get the insight because even though I'm covering music and not politics, and I write about other things as well, social topics, but I'm able to get a view of this is how this is done at the highest level, and to get information from the people who are doing it the best. So it was I definitely still had those aspirations, and I was able to meet with journalists and pick their brains and see how things worked on the inside, that way. And that gave me great perspective. So when I did transition and start, doing more journalism, what to understand from that field.
And when did you make that transition?
2019. Set scene in 2014 to 2019, exactly 5 years, left in March. Came to Atlanta, that's a whole nother topic, but I was gonna be in LA from one point, I was gonna be in New York, and then God had it, I was supposed to be in Atlanta. So I came to Atlanta in April of left scene in March, came to Atlanta in April of 2019. And before I left, I had already been working for about 4 months with HipHopDX. And that's a hip hop publication. And I had been a fan of their website. I reached out to the editor in chief, and that's one of my other things, shoot your shot. So many relationships and different things that I've been able to do came from me just being able to reach out, talk to people. I started writing on Label Type Different, which is just my blog, just to get some work out there and and I talk about this in my book as well. I just wanted to get my journalism chops back, and they weren't great at first. I took years off, and it took me a while, but showed the editor-in-chief my work, and he could tell, okay, the content is fine. We can work on the journalism. So anyway, I never went on an interview. You hired me. He told me to gave me a link to a call, and I'm on a call, and it's for new hires. So that was all from reaching out to him on LinkedIn. So I always say, have a resume, have some work that you can show, and then shoot your shot. You never knows where that lands. So I started there in December. When I moved here in April, I was still writing for them, and I was writing more daily, like, every single day, covering news stories and doing interviews here and there. So once I got to Atlanta, and Atlanta is, Mecca hip hop at this moment. And no disrespect, New York will always be the home and birthplace, but right now, hip hop lives in Atlanta. It's no better place to be. So I was exposed to so many different events, where I could cover and get work done. So yeah, that was my transition.
What are some of the work been like that you got to do at HipHopDX, and what are some interviews that you've gotten, the chance to do while working for them now that you're getting the chance to do work in the field that you wanted to be in and do something that you're passionate about?
I was able, I was the one of the first events that the first event that I covered was the Black Music Honors, and was able to interview Tamia and Yolanda Adams and Naughty by Nature, and it was a few others. I have to go back through my reel, but it was a great experience working the red carpet, and that was my first, you know, experience with that dog eat dog kind of scenario. But it was fun. It was you know, a lot of people there that I met. You know, I kept in contact with, and still in contact with to this day, and they've grown and done great things. I remember Sly, who we both know, she was there. That was her first event, but we ended up meeting at the Revolt Summit. And Sierra Brooks, she was there as well, all super cool. So those were that was the first event that I covered. Then the Revolt Summit, I always say that was the event that really took everything off and changed my life. I was working. I went all 3 days. Yeah, I went all 3 days, and I got to interview Angie Martinez, and that was my first like major interview for HipHopDX. You know, and she's given me one of the questions I asked her, what's the keys to great interview? And she, like, to this day, I use the advice that she gave me. And I just think that was a godsend. Like, this is somebody who, you know, Angie Martinez with only a few people. And I remember those times where she was the only one of the few people who could interview Jay-Z and Nas, who could interview Biggie and Tupac, who could, you know, she was everybody in hip hop respected her because she was a journalist with integrity, and she was always able to get people to talk and just have a conversation. So for that to be my first major interview, I think that was, and for her to give that advice, I think that was a godsend. And so from there, I mean, so many relationships happened from there. I end up meeting, man, this is, you know, I can't wait till more comes out. You know, and I'm working on that on him, Groovy Lou, who's an iconic stylist. Most people know who he is. They or will see him and they might not know his name. We're like, oh, I know who that guy is because he plays the background. But he's worked with everybody to this day and continues to. I mean, he styled Corday, he styled Nipsey Hussle, you know, and all those famous GQ covers. Going back, you know, Lil Wayne, Kanye, Biggie, of course, starting off with Biggie and Craig Mack and Lauryn Hill, and the list goes on. So he was, I was able to interview him, pick his brain, did a blessed interview. He's a producer. He's produced for everybody from Megan Thee Stallion, Justin Bieber, Young Thug, just a whole bunch of people. He was a really, you know, great interview. Rico Wade, who, you know, Waterfalls and Outkast, and who's this multi-platinum producer, was able to interview him from Organized Noise. And then you know, that's where I met Sly and met a lot of my media friends who, you know, we still, you know, communicate to this day. So it was a great experience. I was able to actually get real information from the panels they had there, that it wasn't like this, you know, when you go to, when people who are industry insiders and you go to different events and they're giving you generic information, you know, they're not really telling you how to, you know, get to your job or get to the bag or the specifics behind it. You know, one of my favorite podcasts, outside of this one, is
I appreciate that.
no problem. It's Earn Your Leisure, and it's because they're like, okay, this is how you do this in this industry if you're a business owner, and then they go through the numbers and you get real information. And that was the equivalent side on music with the Revolt Summit was. They would give you, okay, this is how you move in the industry. This is how you would, you know, you would let for IG grow your brand. This is how much we would charge, or how we calculate what we would charge brands. This is how we get to the brands. It was information real knowledge and information that you wouldn't get anywhere else. So anyway, that experience was probably that was the best that I had with HipHopDX. And then I covered a lot of Pandora playbacks. J1, who's the director of hip hop there now, he threw a lot of those before the pandemic and got to see so many different interviews with Killer Mike and Q for 112, and it was so many. 2 Chainz was there. Ti was just that was a great experience as well. So I got to cover a lot for HipHopDX during that time frame. And I continued until with them, I want to say probably my days, maybe March of 2021 or something like that. But once the pandemic hit and they were bought by Warner Music Group, basically got rid of everybody that was freelance, hired people internally, and then you can still, pitch things here and there. So now I'm more freelance, and I'm working on just being on other publications, and that's kind of by the time this come out, it'll probably be some out, and if not, it will be something soon. But that's where I'm at now with just still writing, still putting my stuff out there, just with different other publications when I can. And now we're having more events. I'm going to get back into covering things since the world is starting to open back up again.
So when you look at everything since going to college, going to Morgan State, majoring, well, having the aspiration to become a journalist, but then you go in a completely different path, becoming a bank teller, then going in IT, but getting to CNN and then going with HipHopDX. Did you ever think your life would go that trajectory to end up where you are now today?
No. If I were to take a guess, I would have, that would have been the last thing that I would guess, because it's a path that, well, it's only for me. And everybody has their different pathways. And when I was, especially young and in journalism, I was, and still am, fascinated by just people's stories of how they got to where they were supposed to get to. And a lot of it has the same, characteristics, but the actual path is different for everybody. So you just put in those characteristics in that work. And I think getting to CNN and doing, and I could have continued to grow and thrive and I had a great career there, and I was well respected, and I could, I believe if I wanted to, I believe they would have me, go back and all of those things. But I think that was for me, it honestly was in my life to show me, like, okay, you can accomplish what everybody sees as, successful, have this successful job, make a decent amount of money, have your own home, blah, 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 blah. And you're not fulfilled because you're not doing your purpose. So any of these things that can come from, for me, from a job, it just wasn't, it was like, oh, great experiences to have, but I'm not fulfilled because this is not what I'm doing. So do I think that I would have been able to get even an interview with HipHopDX, even though they knew that I was in IT, but without, I'm sure he noticed CNN on my LinkedIn profile. He mentioned it. I don't know if that was the reason he responded or whatever, and I'm sure, my work is the reason I got hired, because he had to look at my work as a writer. But would I've even got a reply without that? I can't say. So I think CNN played a huge factor in showing me that, okay, you can have these aspirations of the world, but it's still not going to fulfill what you need to do. And so I needed to experience that mountaintop to go to another mountaintop. And, of course, when I was leaving CNN, they were like, okay, so you're leaving this big global brand to work with who in the hip hop realm. HipHopDX is very, especially at that time, was very respected, and they have a huge following on their own. But compared to CNN, a global brand, it was like, most people couldn't understand it, and it wasn't for them to understand it. I think that's what a lot of people is. You're gonna make moves in life. That's what my book, The Trust Your Vision, is about. You gotta, tap into you and see what speaks to you, and then you're gonna make moves that some people don't understand, but it's all gonna end up working out in the end, because that's what you're called to do.
Just about to transition right into the book. What was the inspiration to writing the book, especially by going through it and being able to listen to it myself? You talk a lot about your personal stories and then how that can help other people, like you said, trust their vision.
Yeah, thanks. I actually never thought I'd write a book, even though as a writer I prefer short form. I think a lot of people don't finish reading books, and I love books. Alchemist is one of my favorite books, and numerous others. But I just thought that it wasn't it wasn't something that I wanted to do because I feel like people won't read it all and whatever the case is. And then my friend, who's also an author, Natalia Crossdale, she wrote this short form book, and it was amazing, called Prayer Warrior, and I was able to finish it in a day, and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is something where anybody can pick up, whether you're in high school or whether you're young or formerly young is what I say. It's senior citizen, whatever, and everything in between is readable for everybody. And so I was like, this is the realm that I want to get in. I want to make something a quick read that anybody can read that will inspire people to just get out there and find your purpose and live into your purpose, and get to it, because a lot of people just don't know how to get to their purpose. So the purpose of the book was to help people find their purpose and live out the life that they want to live.
So, as we get ready to wrap things up, after the journey that you have gone through in your life, what is the single piece of advice that you would like to give anyone who, it doesn't have to be anyone that's going into journalism or going into a particular field, but what is the advice that you would want to give someone that is trying to break through into whatever they're trying to do?
I would say to just tap into yourself. It's going to be a lot of distractions around you. It's going to be a lot of people telling you what you should do with your life. Only you and the creator, whoever you believe in, knows what you are going to do with your life. So if so many people go into the Jay-Z story of his uncle just telling me, you could never sell 1 million records, because he couldn't see it. He projected his fears on him. So you're gonna have people around you that's gonna say, oh, this is what you should do, or whatever the case is. And no one can tell you to do with your life but you and the creator. So I would say just to block out the noise, to tap into what it is you actually love. I always loved journalism, and I always came back to it. And then come up with a strategical plan, because the dreams don't pay bills. It's one of my chapters. You got to come up with a plan to actually be able to sustain yourself and be able to make money and find mentors. And hey, you're not the first person most likely doing what you want to do. You have somebody on this earth who has done it before. Lean on mentorship. So you have a preview, an idea, and an introspect, of what you can do. So I would say that would be my advice: just to tap in, come up with a logical plan, and then to do it. Don't waste too much time or looking for the perfect time. I did that. I wasted a lot of time, trying to wait into this perfect situation that never happens. It's never going to be perfect. Just keep doing it. Keep putting yourself out there. Keep building and getting your stuff into different people's hands, and eventually it's going to be in the right hands.
Definitely great words. We're gonna get ready to wrap things up. I'm gonna ask you a few quick questions, and then we'll be out. So, favorite musicians, your top three.
Woo. So I'm gonna have to go with Marvin Gaye for sure. We just talking about musicians. That's my PG. We're just talking about musicians. We're not talking about producers. We just talk artists. Are you saying just artists?
I'm saying artists, but we can also throw producers in there too, because they're just as important to making these artists as great as they are.
Yeah. Okay. So it was hard for me not to say Marvin Gaye for sure. Hard for me producer wise not to say Quincy Jones. Biggie, Nas. I know I'm going over three. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there. But those were, of course, I love Kendrick right now. Anyway, I'll stop. I can go on for.
Gotcha. By the way, we need more Kendrick in our lives. It's been
Definitely.
way too long, man.
We need that album. Hopefully, you've been teasing it for the last couple of years. Hopefully, it comes out before the year ends because we definitely need that.
I'm definitely hoping so. So, top favorite story that you have gotten the chance to do,
I
or
would say,
interview, I should say, story
yeah,
slash interview.
right. I would say blessed. I would say it was between him and Groovy Lou because they had so much insight. But blessed is this producer who most people, he's done so many things, but he stays low key under the radar. And if you're in the industry, you know him. If you're not, you most likely don't. But he has such he was so intuitive and he had so much wisdom at his young age. And his story was so divine. He was going to school and he was driving home with his girlfriend. I talk about this in an article with HipHopDX, but he sees a light and then he comes home he hears in his head to leave school and pursue producing. Long story short, because he's supposed to be quick, he did, and he ended up, of course, being a super producer. But it would be blessed, that story, because it was divine.
Favorite album of all time.
Oh, this is as first of all, this is going to change. Is going to constantly change. Right now, I would say the Nas Untitled album that was formerly called something else. But yeah, right now I'm going to roll with that. But that's a hard that changes daily. That's hard to do. Yeah.
I'll probably change by the time the next Kendrick album definitely come out as well.
Absolutely. Definitely. I'm sure he'll be in there.
Theme song to your life.
Mm. Oh man, that's a great question. Theme song. I always think of "You Don't Know," Jay-Z, and Kanye, "The Good Life." But yeah, "You Don't Know," Jay-Z. I would say those are two of would be my life themes.
And then my very last question, because this podcast is all about networking. Name someone that you think would be a great guest for this show, but you got to help with the answer. Like how Sly helped get you here, you got to help get someone else here.
Okay, so are you looking for any genre in particular, any type of
It can be musician, journalism. I know you have people in both worlds. It can be anyone from there, or just, but it has to be someone that you can get.
okay, I got you. Let's see. I do have. I'm trying to figure who has something that's has something going on now. I can give you a couple. Let me think. On. I want definitely Janera's one, and who she's a singer. I'm going to give you another one too. Let me think on that. But I definitely want to say Janera. She's a singer, and let me check to see, who's doing me, what's going on at this time, and I'll definitely give you some names. I'll give you more names. I'll give you a few names, and I appreciate Sly for this. Also, definitely, and you for doing the interview as well.
Hey man, it's no problem. Definitely, thank you to Sly for getting you here, and definitely, where can people find you on social media, and then where can people find your book as well?
Okay, so my social media on Instagram is one spelling the number out ONE of them underscore ones. So one of them underscore ones. You can also on Amazon just search Trust Your Vision and Brian Hampton, and the book will come up. We have the audio book out now and a digital copy. Paper book it'll be out probably by the end of the week or next week. Well, probably by the time this is out. So people can reach me there if you just Google search Brian Hampton Trust Your Vision or Brian Hampton HipHopDX. You'll be able to see my work. There. Labeltypedifferent.com is also a website that you can contact that has my Instagram and everything else on there. So those are all the ways that you can reach me.
Gotcha. Well, Brian, it has definitely been a pleasure getting the chance to talk with you. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do next, and definitely check out the book. It is definitely a must read, a must listen, depending on how you listen. But Brian, thank you so much for joining me on record, and definitely looking forward to see what you do next. Much success to you, brother.
Oh, and greatly appreciate it. Thank you, and it was a great question. So really enjoyed this.